And so again, right now we're standing by for Dragon to make that pass over a SpaceX ground site. The plan, we've now got some additional cameras trained on Dragon, just giving the teams additional alignment insight into the capsule as it still hangs out 20 meters away from the docking port. We're just beginning a pass over station ground sites now, and teams are going to work to get that video up to the crew. This ground site pass will last for about 5 minutes, and that means the video will likely not be available for the entirety of that final approach. However,
Dragon,
the way the
SpaceX
flight
on the
rules
big
are
loop,
written,
confirm crew readiness for final approach.
SpaceX Endeavor, copy all, we're ready, visors down.
and again, as long as the teams
Dragon,
have this
SpaceX
data now,
on the
and
big
we're
loop,
able to
resume
confirm
imminent.
good alignment,
Dragon is entering approach 2.
and Dragon's flight computer getting into approach 2 prep. So we've gotten that video. We've been able to confirm alignment here on the ground. The NASA flight director and the SpaceX mission director have conferred and confirmed Dragon is in good alignment. We have additional tools available, giving us degrees off axis, just real-time telemetry of Dragon during its approach.
2 and 1, and we'll be hands off at 2 meters.
Good copy, Dragon.
All right, so Dragon is now accelerating in for docking. So again, we were able to get that ground pass video. Teams here in Houston, visiting vehicle officer, other support personnel confirmed Dragon was in good alignment, and that video from the ground site, that's the one you were just seeing on the left. So Dragon's now continuing in towards docking. We've departed waypoint 2. We're only 17.5 meters away. We confirmed good alignment, and we've got additional views now trained on Dragon, giving additional situational awareness, and we're continuing to get those updates from the navigational equipment on board Dragon. The LiDAR's giving real-time range rate. We're getting real-time degrees, and that's also being fed to the crew in real time. They don't have that video, but they do have all that additional data that's able to give them enough data to make decisions for a board if they need to. So we have proceeded. We are go for docking. Dragon's flying in. It's moving at less than 1/10 of a meter per second. We're just about 15 meters away now from the docking port on the space-facing side of Node 2. And you can see the soft capture ring on the docking mechanisms extended. It's got 3 of those slightly triangular looking shapes, and those are the pedals that are going to be used to guide it into the passive on. After that makes the initial attachment, make a hard mate, engaging 12 hooks to give the hard mate, the hard dock to the space station.
SpaceX copies 10 meters.
So 10 meters again. Once we get to about 6 meters, you're going to hear the crew call out chop. That's the crew hands-off point. That's just giving direction to the crew on board Dragon not to make any manual control decisions or movements, as everything gets handled by the flight computer from that point in. 8 meters away. Continuing to get confirmation that Dragon is in the correct attitude in the approach corridor. Not tracking any issues, just past 7 meters from the docking port. Six meters in closing. The International Docking Adapter number 3 in view on the lower right there.
5 meters.
Under 5 meters to go. Still seeing good alignment. under 3 meters. Soft docking ring on
2
Dragon
meters,
on top
hands off.
there. International docking adapter on the
SpaceX
right.
copies 2 meters.
2 meters. We heard chop call, the crew hands off point.
1 meter.
Dragon, SpaceX on the big loop, contact and
capture.
soft capture complete, attenuation in progress.
SpaceX Endeavor, copy all, good.
All right, so with that contact and capture coming at 7:29 a.m. Central Time, 5:29 a.m. Eastern, that's 12:29. So with that initial contact made, the soft capture ring is now going to begin to retract.
Soft capture ring in progress.
That form the hard capture function on board Dragon. 6 of those are actually engaged during the launch, and on the way into orbit, they hold the nose cone, which you can see opened off to the right there. They hold that in place, and then they're opened up once we're on orbit to deploy the nose cone. But 12 of those are now going to engage after the soft capture ring has retracted. Once those 12 are engaged, we'll have a hard mate. Then we can start to connect 2 umbilicals that are going to provide hardline data and power to Dragon through station systems, and then we'll be able to get the docking complete call, and then it's on to some of the post-docking operations. So for the crew inside Dragon, they'll be getting out of their suits, doing some basic cabin configuration as they get ready to open the hatch on their side. That'll be the last hatch to open. Meanwhile, on the station side, Tom Marshburn and the Expedition 67 crew will start outfitting what's called the A-Pass hatch. That's the hatch on the station side. It's got a small valve that Marshburn's going to open up to begin to flow atmosphere to the space between the Dragon and the station hatches. Right now, it's still exposed to vacuum, but as soon as we're able to pull Dragon in and engage those hooks, that will become a sealed space, and so we'll be able to pressurize it, essentially just flowing atmosphere from the station into that previously vacuum space between the 2 hatches. We'll stop a couple of times on the way up in the pressure just to do leak checks and let thermals equalize to make sure that we're actually measuring pressure and how much atmosphere is in there, not just thermal fluctuations. And so once we get that up to pretty much the same ambient pressure as the space station, we'll open the A-Pass hatch first, and then it'll be over to the Dragon crew to open the hatch into Crew Dragon Endeavor. So still waiting for that soft capture ring to retract. This might be a bit of deja vu for Dragon Commander Mike L.A., as this is actually the 2nd time in his spaceflight career that he's docked to the space station on a spacecraft named Endeavor. He flew on Shuttle Endeavor back on STS-113, flying to the station in November of 2002 to deliver the Expedition 6 crew. So thank you to our resident spaceflight encyclopedia for that tidbit. So for now, the soft capture ring's still retracting, and once that's completed, we'll be able to begin connecting those hooks, and those are going to hold it in place. We'll get those umbilicals, and then we'll be able to start stepping into hatch operations.
Dragon, SpaceX on the big loop, ring retraction complete. Docking sequence is holding for MCS reconfiguration.
SpaceX Endeavor, copy all.
And that soft capture ring has retracted. As you heard, we're going to now stand by for a moment for MCS reconfigure. That's the motion control system onboard station. For the docking ops, we had handed over to the thrusters on the Russian segment for propulsive attitude control. Now that the soft capture is completed, we're going to hand back over to the gyroscopes, the large gyroscopes on the U.S. segment that are just run electronically to provide non-propulsive attitude control to the station. And then once that handover is complete, we'll start engaging those 12 hooks, holding Dragon in place, and then getting closer to that docking complete call. But if you're just joining the docking, that initial contact and capture did take place just about 5 minutes ago at 7:29 a.m. Central, 5:29 a.m. Pacific, 12:29 GMT, as both the station and Dragon were flying 258 statute miles over the Atlantic, connecting the spacecraft to the station, carrying the first all-private astronaut mission to
Station
the orbiting
Houston,
lab.
MCS is configured. Proceeding with hook driving.
Station copies.
And we now have the motion control system on the station reconfigured back in attitude control being done by the U.S. gyroscopes, and they're now going to start engaging those 12 hooks on the Dragon capsule. All right, we've got confirmation that the hooks have started to drive, and so there's 12 total. We're going to do them in 2 groups of 6. So the first set of 6 driving now. In this split screen view, you've got the newly arrived Dragon Endeavor on the left. On the right there is NASA astronaut and current Expedition 67 Commander Tom Marshburn. He's on the timeline to take the lead in the vestibule pressurization operation, so he's going to be moving into the pressurized mating adapter in the space-facing side of Node 2 and working on the station side hatch, opening up a valve to start to flow atmosphere from station into that soon-to-be sealed pressurized area between the 2 hatches. And again, we expect hatch opening to take place roughly 2 hours. Should be a little bit less than 2 hours following a docking. So with that docking happening right around 7:30 Central, it'll probably be sometime in the 9 o'clock hour before we get the hatches open. For the crew on board, they're going to remain in their seats throughout this as we continue to drive the hooks. And then once those hooks are driven and docking is complete, we will be able to have them get out of the suits. That'll be one of the first items for them. They'll also begin to just reconfigure the cabin. And we just got confirmation 6 of those hooks are engaged, so the first set is good. And then the second set is now driving. And again, first set of hooks are in place. Second set of 6 hooks are now driving. And once we get those in place and get the umbilicals deployed, we'll have docking complete. And then the crew will be able to get out of their suits on board of Dragon. They'll start to reconfigure the cabin. One of the first things that they'll do once we get hatches open is to remove what's called a LiO canister. It's lithium hydroxide. That's the system used on board of Dragon to scrub CO2 from the air. They just remove it and put a seal over it, as they've got a couple of essentially cartridges that get used while Dragon's in free flight. And as they're going to be integrating Dragon's atmosphere with the rest of station, they'll take that out, and then they'll be able to rely on the station atmospheric they get on board. Sometimes we usually get asked, where's everybody going to essentially for over in
SpaceX Endeavor hard capture complete.
hook. Next up are some umbilicals, but Dragon now firmly attached to the space station. We see the visors come up on the crew inside, and we can start now stepping into some of the operations to get those hatches open. With that, I'm going to send it over to the team in Hawthorne. Andy, Tricia, congratulations on docking the first private astronaut mission to station. Why don't you take us a little bit for the rest of the way?
Yeah, thank you, Dan. Right back at you. That was amazing. And so we did dock about an hour. I'm trying to. As Dan had mentioned, and we heard over the nets, hard capture is complete. We are waiting for umbilicals to be plugged in and installed, but Dragon is now firmly secured to the International Space Station, so docking procedures can continue, and eventually the crew will make their way out of Dragon and onto the International Space Station.
I mean, oh my gosh. Dragon approaching the docking adapter, and then, completing that dock was just, I mean, personally for me, I was very, very excited. So I can only imagine what the crew is feeling like right now. This is, like setting off the rest of the 8 days that they're going to have on orbit. So just an incredibly exciting time and very special for everyone involved.
Yeah, and absolutely an incredible effort from the teams to troubleshoot that issue and get things going. That is really what the joint operations and space is about. You had mentioned it earlier. Space is not easy, but with the crew now one step closer to getting on board the International Space Station and starting all of the cool science that I'm sure they're excited to do.
Dragon, SpaceX on the big loop, docking sequence complete. I hope you enjoyed the extra half orbit in Dragon, or at least found it memorable. Crew Dragon Endeavor and MLA, welcome back. Eytan, Larry, Mark, welcome to the International Space Station.
SpaceX Endeavor, we copy all. We're happy to be here, even though we're a bit late, and looking forward to the next chapter. Thanks for all the great work.
On behalf of SpaceX, it's been a pleasure. time, ground will be. You are go to doff suits per procedure 4.012. We'll bring the camera's external.
Thanks, Jake. We're moving to 4.012.
And in H, welcome to the International Space Station. We are looking forward to this historic mission.
MCCH into the ISS with
We're looking forward to it, Endeavour. Welcome aboard.
As the crew on board Capsule Endeavour begin to doff or take off their
Cameras are external.
Stored in the Dragon, but it is quite a funny scene to see the astronauts kind of floating around gathering their belongings, and there's like these 4 mannequins sitting in the seats, but they're getting ready. There are a couple more operations that needs to happen before we can open both of the hatches. So as Dan was mentioning, the A-Pass hatch on the International Space Station side will open first. Prior to that, we're going to fill the vestibule, which is the space between the 2 hatches. We're going to fill that with air and pressure to make sure that it is equalized on both sides. Then we'll open the A-Pass hatch, then the Dragon hatch will open, and then the crews can meet.
Station Houston for Tom on the big loop.
Go ahead, Houston, on the big loop.
Yes, sir. Better late than never, but we can now give you a go to get into ingress part 1, and specifically you have a go through 1.1 and 2.2.
Copy 1.1 and 2.1. I have a go for the part 1 of hatch opening.
Copy that. Also, you have a go in 2.2 when you get there.
Copy, and a go in 2.2.
Hatch open on both sides. It's been, outside of the small hiccup with video, smooth ride up to the International Space Station.
Absolutely. The crew has certainly been on a long journey starting A, leading all the Pacific on April 8th, and now, just having completed the docking sequence, and now they're beginning hatch operations. It's just very exciting to see the whole journey that they've been through.
Yeah, the crew has been in space and in Dragon for almost a day, actually. We're coming up on 23 or 24 hours inside the capsule. On board, they were able to eat a couple of meals. They had a sleep and rest period. We did an on. I'm sure the crew head their way. Here is a
lots of exciting things happening. With that,
Yeah, same here. Do you want me to do another big loop?
At this point, I'm expecting it's a suit issue. That's not gospel, but I think we're good. Oh, I understand. Yeah, Mike, comm check on the big loop would be good. Cabin Mike on the big loop.
Endeavor on the big loop. Cabin Mike check.
Endeavor SpaceX on the big loop. Cabin Mike check 5x5.
Copy all. Thanks, Jake.
So we are going through some checks. This is a view of Dragon. It's actually pointing down towards Earth, and the crew is inside, again, doffing their spacesuits or taking.
Hey, thanks, Andy. Yeah, we are now docked and ready to. Pretty soon, we're going to in the station's A-pass hatch. It's just the hatch on the station side into what's known as the vestibule. That's just that small space that before docking is just exposed to vacuum, but now with Dragon firmly attached, we've got a tight seal, and we're going to start pressurizing that section. So we're going to do it in a couple of steps. Station Commander Tom Marshburn is going to be primed for this. And first thing is he's right now in Node 2 in the Harmony module, and here's a live view. First, he's working to open up what's known as the close during the docking operations. And with that time open, so you can see now inside the do use it for storage, as space is limited on board the station, so number of items stored, but you can see the cover to the A-pass hatch now in view. So Marshburn is going to go there. He's going to open a small valve. It's going to start flowing atmosphere from the station into the vestibule. We're going to slowly pressurize that. We're going to use sensors on the Dragon hatch to measure temperature and pressure inside of the vestibule as that happens.
Copy. Hatch open. Thanks, Tom.
And so Marshburn just radioing down the overhead hatch, so the hatch into the pressurized mating adapter is opened. He's grabbed a tablet with his procedures on, and he's going to now start stepping through the vestibule pressurization. So he's going to open a small equalization valve, and that's going to start flowing air from station into that vestibule. We're going to give it some time for those hatch seals inside to relax, as we're going to be introducing a pretty substantial thermal change for them. So again, as we're measuring pressure inside, we want to ensure that that's not just the air heating up, but we're getting an accurate reading of how much atmosphere is now in that vestibule. And we're going to continue this pressurization until you essentially equalize the pressure between the vestibule and the station and Dragon. They're all going to be at a very similar pressure. We can wait for pressures to equalize, so we can just kind of pause and wait. But at this point, the vestibule pressurization has started. It sounds like we're getting that valve open. And so we're going to start stepping through. So this all told will take about 10 minutes to start the pressurization. And then after that, we're going to do a leak check. That can go anywhere from 15 minutes. Quick view of Raja Chari, who's doing our primary Dragon monitoring there. But after we get the vestibule pressurized, we'll go into a leak check where they just, again, they wait for thermal conditions to stabilize. They're able to do a leak check and then ensure that the vestibule is pressure tight.
Dragon, SpaceX on Dragon to ground, no response required. ISS crew are stepping into vestibule pressurization imminently. You are free to follow along with telemetry in 4.400 section 4 if you'd like.
Houston station on the big loop. A-pass equalization valve is open for 75 seconds, now closed at the GMT 12:55.
1255, copy. We will take care of the leak check from the ground, give you a heads up here in just a little bit.
Copy.
And so as we just heard, the Dragon Again, this is seven 5:29 a.m. Pacific. Drag miles over the Atlantic Ocean. We did hang out at waypoint 2, just about 20 minutes away. Effect a workaround. Teams on the ground confirming that Dragon was in the proper alignment, proper attitude, and then the capsule was able to get the go for final approach and then link up. So with the docking complete, Dragon firmly attached, we're into hatch ops. So Tom Marshburn has started the pressurization of the vestibule, that space between the two hatches, and we're going to continue that and then execute a leak check, which can take anywhere from 15 minutes up to an hour, just depending on what kind of readings we start getting back. We're going to be using sensors on the Dragon hatch for tracking pressure, temperature, everything inside that vestibule. Meanwhile, the crew on board Dragon is able to now get out of their suits that they were wearing for that dynamic phase of rendezvous and docking. And then once they're out of there, they can monitor the hatch ops from their side. And then once everything is done with the station crew getting the vestibule pressurized, they'll open up the station side hatch first, and then it'll be over to the AX-1 crew to open the hatch on Dragon. And then after we get the hatches open, the Expedition 67 crew will be able to welcome them on board, and we will have a welcome ceremony sometime after hatch open. Could take as long as 30 minutes, as there are a couple of steps they have to take just after we get the hatches open, just to get Dragon configured for docked operations, including taking some steps just to start integrating Dragon's cabin atmosphere with that on board the space station. And then we'll get the entire Expedition 67 crew, all 7 of them, along with the recently arrived AX-1 astronauts all together, and have a special ceremony to welcome the first private astronaut mission to the space station. We docked about 45 minutes behind schedule per the original timeline, so we are expecting pretty much everything else to shift with that. But we'll continue to give you updates as we get through hatch operations and get ready to bring the crew on board.
Station Endeavour, Houston, on the big Yes, Station, and Endeavour wanted to give everyone a heads up the way the rest of the day is going to look here, with docking occurring 45 minutes late. The intention here is the PAO event and the subsequent safety briefing will slide to the right by 45 minutes, which will carry over to the rest of the day. However, we'll let you guys flex and manage. If you're able to make up some time, we are good with that. Otherwise, we'll hang in with you as the timeline would be extended a little bit. How copy?
Endeavour copies all.
Copy, and thanks for the flexibility.
And Houston from Endeavour, for awareness, if station is rogering up on those calls, we are not hearing them.
And copy that, LA. We talked to Station on Space to Ground 3 earlier, so they are aware, so we're good and in sync. But thanks for the heads up.
Okay, you got it.
LA, we've got you loud and clear, and we're following along on Space to Ground 2. Big loop.
Okay, Kayla, thanks.
And we just heard an update called up to the crew from the Capcom Scotts Gady here in Houston. As mentioned, docking did take place about 45 minutes after the initially intended time, as we did spend extra time at waypoint 2, just 20 meters away from station, to troubleshoot a video issue, just getting video up to the station crew. We were able to come up with a workaround. Teams on the ground able to confirm Dragon attitude, positioning, all within normal bounds, and they did that final approach and that docking happening at 7:29 a.m. Central, 5:29 a.m. Pacific. That's 12:29 GMT, and that happened while both the station and Dragon were flying just over the central part of the Atlantic Ocean. Since then, we're already now into hatch operations. So the vestibule pressurization is underway. A small relief valve has been opened on the station side to flow atmosphere into that space between the Dragon and station hatches. We're using sensors on the Dragon hatch to measure that pressurization. And then we're going to, after it gets up to about ambient pressure with the rest of the station, we're going to pause. And we're going to let thermal stabilize and then conduct a leak check, just to make sure that we've got a tight seal between the Dragon and the station before we start opening up the hatches. We're going to open the hatch on the station side first. It's called the A-Pass hatch. So the station crew will get that open, and then once we, again, confirm pressures are roughly equalized between station and Dragon,
Station,
the
SpaceX
Dragon
on the
crew
big loop.
will open up their
Power
hatch.
connection to Dragon established.
Endeavour copies.
They just called up that the power connection to Dragon has been established. So 2 umbilicals have now been extended and connected between the Dragon spacecraft and the space station. That allows them to have a hardline integration into station power and data. System its own hardware inside, not relying on those solar arrays or any batteries at this point, able to draw power from the station. Dragon is largely left in a powered down mode after the crew gets on board. A lot of its systems put into kind of a quiescent mode while docked, with the SpaceX teams routinely bringing them up during the docked mission just to do checkouts. But for now, they are hooked in to station power, to station data, and then once we get the hatches open, they'll take some steps to integrate the cabin atmosphere in Dragon with that on board the space station, able to rely on the regenerative capabilities of the space station, and then preserving the consumables on board Dragon, both the breathable oxygen and nitrogen, and also the carbon dioxide scrubbing. So those will get essentially taken out of their configs and will get brought back up online when it's time for Dragon to depart. And so at this point, the vestibule has been pressurized, and we're now going to start stepping through those leak checks. Those can take as short as about 15 minutes up to an hour. Just depends on how long it takes to reach a thermal equilibrium, and also just to make sure that we have steady pressure readings, again using sensors on the Dragon hatch to actually perform this leak check. Then after we confirm a good leak check, we'll be able to get the go up to the station crew to open up the hatch on their side, and then it'll be over to the SpaceX team. There's usually about 30 minutes between those two hatches being opened, the APAS coming first, followed shortly after by the Dragon hatch. But things look quiet right now. The crew actually getting some time, the crew on board station getting some time right now for their midday meal before they get ready to get the hatch open and welcome the AX-1 astronauts on board. Right after we get everyone on, we'll have the entire Expedition 67 crew join with the AX-1 astronauts and do a formal welcome ceremony welcoming the first fully private astronaut mission on board the space station. Following that, there's still a pretty busy day for the rest of the afternoon. The station commander, Tom Marshburn, will take the entire station crew, so all of our new astronauts as well as the Expedition 67 ones, and doing a safety briefing. This is routine for any crew members arriving at the space station, whether they're professional astronauts or on these new private astronaut missions. Marshburn, as the commander, has overall safety authority for the crew during the expedition on board, and he'll just go through essentially an orientation session, showing where all of the critical safety equipment is located, going over paths to safe haven, back to vehicles, hatch closings, things of that nature. Just giving a safety briefing lasts typically about an hour before the crew will then go through the rest of their day. Station Commander Marshburn is going to be taking about an hour and a half to do what's known as crew handover with all the newly arrived astronauts, essentially just giving them a tour of the facilities on board, showing them where they're going to be setting up for the duration, just starting to get them acquainted with their home for more than the next week while they're on board. I mentioned it earlier, but we do usually get asked pretty frequently, where's everyone going to sleep? As we do not have 11 crew quarters on board, but we have 11 crew members on the space station now. So for our recently arrived AX-1 crew, one of them is going to sleep inside of Crew Dragon Endeavour. One of them is going to be over in the Quest airlock, where we stage spacewalks out of. We're not doing any spacewalks during this mission or anytime soon, no planned spacewalks. So one crew member will set up in there, and then two will be in the Columbus module. One in the newly installed CASA, the crew quarters that's over in Columbus, and then another one just setting up what we typically refer to as a camp-out configuration, also in Columbus. So they'll be spread out throughout the station for their time on board. So again, right now, the vestibule has been pressurized. We're going through the leak checks. That view on the right, a view up towards the docking port. You're looking at the APAS or the station hatch side. Pretty soon after we get through. And again, pretty soon after we get through this leak check, the crew on board will get the go to begin opening that hatch. We'll get the station side open first, followed shortly thereafter by the hatch on board Dragon. And then we'll be able to get the AX-1 crew inside and go through a welcome ceremony to welcome these first private astronaut mission crew members on board the station. We'll have a couple of participants here on the ground able to talk to the crew, and then their commander, Mike L.A., will go through a short ceremony, and then it'll be off and running for the AX-1 mission. They've already got a number of activities, both just kind of getting themselves set up, but already stepping into some of their science, their outreach activities immediately on this day today. The entire crew, so everybody on board, is scheduled to go to sleep at a little bit later than the normal time, about 4:30 Central here in Houston. We do keep all of the crew on essentially the same sleep schedule whenever possible, just so you don't have, obviously, people moving around and turning lights on while you're trying to sleep in low Earth orbit. They typically follow a schedule for us here in the U.S. where they're waking up in the middle of the night for us. In fact, their wake-up time tomorrow will be about 1 a.m. here in Houston, and then they immediately get into a lot of their operations. Since tomorrow is Sunday, for most of the Expedition 67 crew, it's going to be a relatively light day, as the weekends are typically an off day for them. They'll have some cleaning tasks, which get scheduled on the weekend. Each of the crew members spending about 2 hours exercising, even on their off days, and that's just to help combat the negative effects on the human body of that extended period of time in microgravity, but largely for the Expedition 67 crew, a day off. But for the AX-1, they have a packed schedule tomorrow. One additional activity that will involve the entire crew, so all 11 individuals on board the station, will be just another emergency roll and response review. So again, just going over what each of the crew members has to do in the event of a contingency. We plan for these, we train for these. Everybody that flies to the space station has to go through that training on the ground, and then they're just getting a refresher now that they're up on board around the real hardware, around the real settings that they would have to make that response. So for right now, we're just continuing to follow. Again, they're doing leak checks right now in the vestibule. That's that space between the two hatches, the hatch on station and the hatch on Dragon. We've pressurized it, opening up the valve and introducing atmosphere from the station into that small space. And so we'll hold here for a while, wait for essentially the leak rate to bottom out, make sure we have a tight seal before we can get ready to open up the hatch on the station side first, followed soon after by the hatch on Dragon. And this is Mission Control Houston, so we are still waiting for vestibule leak checks to be completed. Again, it has been pressurized, that small space between the space station and the Dragon. And those leak checks taking anywhere from 15 minutes all the way up to an hour. As was radioed up to the crew, we were about 45 minutes late with docking after doing that video troubleshooting, hanging out at waypoint 2. We were originally planning on getting the hatch open.
FYI, we're going to reconfigure for hardline comm. It will take down comm to Dragon for about 2 minutes, and we'll give you a call when it comes back.
Endeavor copies.
And the Dragon crew getting a heads up. So as mentioned, Dragon now has hardline connections for both power and data to the space station, so they're now going to configure communications to follow through those paths using station systems to come back down to the ground. Dragon uses the same, while in free flight, the same tracking and data relay satellites as the station, but just so we're not sending an additional wireless signal, or at a minimum just taking advantage of the station systems, they're going to be switching over to the hardline communications. So while that happens, we're still continuing with the vestibule leak checks. They have to take some time to make sure that the temperature swings steady out inside the vestibule, just to ensure that the pressure that we're reading is not caused by any thermal variance, just based off of the actual amount of atmosphere that we've flowed in. And so while we wait for that to continue, the crew on board the station has got some time to go through their midday meal, and meanwhile the astronauts on board Dragon have been given the go to get out of their spacesuits. They wore those throughout all of the approach and docking procedures, and they're going to wear those for all of the different dynamic phases of the flight. So they were in them for launch, they were in them for docking, they're going to be in them for undocking, and then eventually when they come home on that entry, descent, and landing. But as mentioned, we ended up docking about 45 minutes later than originally intended. So pretty much our entire schedule now shifting about 45 minutes later. We'd originally intended to get the hatches open at the bottom of the hour, this hour, at about 8:30 Central. Now looking at getting those hatches open at about 9:15 or so, just depending on how quickly we're able to get through these leak checks and then start to get the hatches open. First the one on station side, and then the one over on Dragon. And so we'll be looking at about the 9 o'clock hour for the hatches to get open, and after which the AX-1 astronauts will make their way on board, and we'll do a formal welcome ceremony with them and the entirety of the Expedition 67 crew. So while we wait for the vestibule leak checks to be completed, taking us one step closer to hatch open, send it back over to Andy and Tricia to tell us a little bit more about this mission, which now attached to the space station. Can't wait to see them on board.
Yeah, thanks, Dan.
Dragon SpaceX on Dragon to ground for cabin configuration update.
Go ahead, Jake.
Hey, Mike. The ISS crew is inching towards a hatch open state. Wanted to check in that the Dragon crew is working towards that as well.
We're working toward it, but we aren't going to be dressed for dinner.
Copy all, Mike. That was perfectly vague, and I will leave it to you to configure the cabin.
Copy. While we're talking about that, in 4.400 section 3, let me know when you're ready.
Hey, I am ready for inventory. Go ahead.
We haven't touched any food since we last spoke. As far as water, we've taken that same bag out of location 9 and are continuing to drink bottles from it. Stand by 1. the 6 bottles have been consumed. Just a question on that. How do you want to account for that? Do you want us to just finish all the bottles that we open and then put them back in the bag?
Hey, Mike, yeah, I think that's going to be the cleanest way to do it. If you could finish any of the half-consumed bottles, and to be clear, these were coming from bag number what?
204.
Copy all. 6 consumed from bag 204.
That's affirmed. And then as far as the trash that is described in 3.2, we are just going to hand over the duffel from location 21 to the ISS crew, and that will have all of our waste in it, both trash and the comfort garments that we're wearing now.
Okay, copy all, Mike. That sounds right. I'll get back to you if we discover that to not be the correct way forward, but good plan.
Okay, thank you.
Station Houston on the big loop for Tom.
Go ahead on the big loop for Tom.
Yeah, Tom, good news. We have passed the leak check, so at this point we can give you a go for your Ingress Part 2 activities. You have a go in step 3.1.
Go in step 3.1 of the opening Part 2. Thank you.
Good copy. Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, so to summarize, we heard a lot of communication back and forth. So this first set of communications was between the core, Jake Bendo. Core stands for Crew Operation Resources Engineer, and folks on board the capsule Endeavor. So the core's job is to communicate with folks inside the Dragon capsule, and the second half of that communication was from between the Capcom, which stands for Capsule Communicator, to folks at the ISS. So I'm speaking to Tom Marshburn. And so we'll continue to hear that as we proceed towards hatch opening and eventually the crews meeting each other and going through the welcome ceremony. But we did get confirmation that we did pass the vestibule leak check. And so on the APAS, on the International Space Station side, things are continuing to progress, and it sounds like the Axiom-1 crew is working towards, getting the Dragon hatch open as well.
Yeah, good news there all the way around. Something interesting to note is their conversation or their back and forth on tracking things like stowage and consumables. You heard their conversation on how to track the water or the beverages that they were consuming and how best to manage that. That actually, speaks to a big part of life in low Earth orbit. Tracking these kinds of things beverage packets, where exactly they're stored, how they're stored are all extremely important in terms of management of life in low Earth orbit. They have to know these things so that they know how much what they need to send up on resupply missions, how much trash they generate, because that's trash management is a pretty big issue on orbit, and it's all part of a coordinated dance between all teams to keep life smooth while in orbit.
Yeah, certainly space in the ISS or space in low Earth orbit in general is a very important resource. So you can even see on screen right now, we're looking at Kayla and I believe that's Thomas Marshburn working towards opening the APAS hatch. But you can see behind them in that corridor, there's tons of storage there. So really...
Station Endeavor, Houston, on the big loop. We have configured for hardline comm. When you have a moment, we'd appreciate comm checks on the big loop.
Station has you loud and clear on the big loop.
So as I was saying, here's an even better view of all of the storage that is being put in that
Station
corridor.
Endeavor on the big loop for comm check.
Endeavor, station has you loud and clear.
And Houston Endeavor on the big loop comm check.
We have you loud and clear as well, LA. Good contracts all around. Appreciate the help, guys.
SpaceX Endeavor on Dragon to ground for water.
SpaceX ready to copy on Dragon to ground.
Hey Jake, looking ahead in 4.400 now in section 5, we need a bottle of water to flush the toilet, so you can take that out of bag 203.
Dragon, SpaceX on the big loop. I think those calls have been coming in on the big loop, but copy bag 203 for final water bottle and waste system flush.
Yes, that's my bad. You're right now. I'm back on Dragon to ground.
Copy all, Mike. No worries.
So yeah, continuing to track inventory, as you mentioned, Tricia. Thomas Marshburn, we saw him earlier, but he's working on a tablet, and we heard the communications back and forth that the team is going through each procedure and each step and really just following the flight operations and docking operations to make sure that everything has been done and checked off before we can really get into the A-Pass hatch opening and the Dragon hatch opening.
Yeah, absolutely. And you heard earlier that we did dock about 45 minutes behind schedule, which meant that the rest of the crew schedule for the day was pushed back by 45 minutes, or at least the next two events on the crew schedule. So that also speaks to a big part of station life, and that crew time is extremely valuable and tracked very, very closely, sometimes even down to the second. This is to make sure that the crew is able to focus on things like scientific research, exercise, getting enough sleep, and just maximizing the efficiency of their days on orbit. Although they do get, downtime, like we mentioned, the AX-1 crew is docking and ingressing into the station during crew weekend for Expedition 67 crew. So, there are times to have some fun.
So they can get to enjoy their time on space, do some flips, and live in microgravity.
Dragon, SpaceX on Dragon to ground for suit docking.
Go ahead, Jake.
Hey, Mike. We're seeing indications that suit 1 has come undone from its umbilical. I want to confirm that the suit is dry or that otherwise this was intended.
It was intended mistakenly. We were just confused on the timing, so we're connecting that one again. The other three are still connected, and we're going for the 1 hour.
Okay, Dragon, copy all. Sorry to play Big Brother, and as you were.
So we are in a short handover period, but we should get views back of the International Space Station. But right before the video had cut off, we did see Thomas Marshburn open up the A-Pass hatch, which is another significant milestone in the docking procedure. So that is great news. I believe he was working on removing the docking target, which is affixed to the other side of the APAS hatch. That is what is used when Dragon was using its LiDAR to dock with the space station. So that's going to be removed, and then the hatch will remain open, and then we'll just wait on Dragon hatch to open, and the
Houston
AX-1
station
crew.
on the big loop, the APAS hatch is open, no condensate in the vestibule.
Good news. Thanks for the report, Kayla.
So yeah, things are continuing to go well. We'll wait for the Dragon hatch to open up next. It will be a few moments from now.
Yeah, you heard, several back and forth between all the teams involved in coordinating this, and making sure that everyone's timeline and the order of steps that they're going in and the procedures that they're executing are, everyone's in track with one another. Really highlights the importance of communication between all the teams.
So after the docking target comes off, we will be affixing a hatch cover on the APAS hatch. As Kayla and Tom Marshburn continue to work in microgravity. And this is something that the AX crew, especially the folks that haven't been to space before, are going to have to get used to. Kayla and Tom here seem to be very fluid in their movements, zipping around and doing what they need to. But we've heard before from previous astronauts that it can take a little bit of time to get used to movement and work in microgravity. So we'll see how the AX crew performs when they eventually leave the Dragon and make their way to the ISS.
Absolutely. And as they continue to make headway into hatch operations, we'll take it back to Dan Hewitt over at JSC for an update.
Hey, thanks, Tricia and Andy. You guys nailed it. We got one of the hatches open, the APAS hatch. There's a couple of steps that the crew has to go through now. The first is, Andy said, we're removing that docking target. So it's kind of a cross mechanism that is sticking out. And so obviously you want to take that off, as otherwise that's going to impede your progress through the hatch. So they'll remove that, get the hatch stowed, and then they install a hatch cover just to provide a little bit of extra padding on the hatch just in case it gets bumped, protecting both the hatch hardware and the crew members. Then we're going to see them move up what's known as an IMV duct, an intramodular ventilation duct. If you can see that kind of large orange hose there, that is going to help and eventually is going to get dragged into the Dragon spacecraft to actually integrate its atmosphere with the rest of stations. So that's where we're able to provide essentially a positive flow, integrating Dragon with the rest of the station stack. So Dragon will be able to take advantage of station oxygen generation, carbon dioxide scrubbing, temperature control, everything, essentially just becoming almost another module while it's docked to the space station. So they'll drag that ducting in, get it ready, and then we'll step into hatch equalization. And so this is just making sure that the pressure on either side of the Dragon hatch is equal, or as close to equal as possible. We can have a little bit of variance. And once that's done, then it'll be time for the Dragon crew to open up the hatch on their side. So they'll just stand by. They're able to monitor, and actually they can see through a small window in the Dragon hatch and look at everything that Tom Marshburn and Caleb Barron are doing here inside the pressurized mating adapter. So you can see them storing that stuff. We're going to get the cover over the APAS hatch next, and then just get closer to that hatch opening. Again, we were about 45 minutes behind schedule for docking. We were expecting the hatch on Dragon to be open just about 10 minutes ago. So right now our timeline puts us at approximately 9:15 or so Central. We could be moving that up if the crews are able to get through the steps quickly before we get that Dragon hatch open. And then after that's opened, the AX-1 astronauts will be able to move through. They'll come down through the top hatch, the space-facing side of the Harmony module, make their way into Node 2, where we'll then get everybody set up, the entire Expedition 67 crew, and all 4 of our AX-1 astronauts newly arrived, and be able to execute a welcome ceremony. There we can see Dragon Endeavour. It's docked to that space-facing port on Node 2. We've got 2 docking adapters right now that work for any U.S.-based vehicles that dock, as opposed to berthing to the space station like the previous version of Dragon. And with this new arrival, we have 2 crewed versions, 2 Dragons capable of carrying crew docked to the space station. We've got Endeavour making a return to the space station, famously being the first to fly astronauts, Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley, to the station on Demo 2, the first human space flight on the Dragon system. And then out of view, but essentially to the left of this camera view, is the Crew Dragon Endurance docked to the forward hatch of the exact same module, Node 2. And that carried NASA's SpaceX Crew 3 astronauts, including Tom Marshburn and Caleb Barron, who we can see continue doing the hatch operations to the space station last fall. So for right now, the crew continuing to step through the procedures. Tom Marshburn almost done with the hatch ops again. He's going to get the cover on, and then they're going to work to get that ducting up to get secured in the vestibule, and then it can get mated after we get the hatch open to help integrate the Dragon cabin with the rest of the station atmosphere. And then the station crew will give a call down that they're ready for hatch equalization, as well as the Dragon crew giving that same call down. And then we'll get a call up from the Capcom here in Houston, just telling the crew to stand by and giving a rough estimate on how long we expect that hatch equalization to take. And then once that's completed, we can get into the Dragon hatch open. And the hatch gets opened on the Dragon side. It can be opened from either side by its design, but just following the normal procedures, it's going to be opened by the Dragon crew. And there's a decal actually on the hatch that just gives the instructions for how to operate the hatch opening mechanism on board. And then after we get the Dragon hatch open, the crew will come on board, and we'll get them all gathered together for a formal welcome ceremony on board the station. If you've ever watched a crew arrive, it's going to look very similar to that. This is something we do with all of our new arrivals at the space station, just to formally give them a welcome and begin their stay on board. Once that's completed, though, they're going to get right to work with Tom Marshburn leading the entire crew through just an initial orientation that'll include all of the current residents of the station, as well as the AX-1 astronauts. So they just go through a safety briefing with him just walking through a reminder of where all the emergency hardware is, what their actions are in the event of any kind of emergency, just going over paths, hatch operations, things of that nature, as this is all stuff that gets trained on the ground, and then refreshers are always done right after new crew members arrive on orbit. And this is training that any individual flying to the space station goes through. We've talked pretty extensively in the lead up to the flight over the differences in training between a traditional long duration astronaut and one of the astronauts on the AX-1 mission. One thing that is absolutely the exact same is that they receive emergency training. That safety training is that first and foremost, to have an effective response, every single member of the crew has to know what their job is in the event of an emergency. And so they'll just do that safety briefing. And then for Expedition 67, they'll largely get the rest of the day off. They have some cargo ops on their timeline to either unpack items that just flew up or just to assist the AX-1 crew in offloading some of the cargo that they brought with them. And meanwhile, Tom Marshburn will also just spend a couple hours walking the newly arrived astronauts just through an orientation, essentially. It shows up on their timeline as something called crew handover, just getting them acquainted with the surroundings, walking them through the basics of where they'll be able to do toiletry and hygiene functions, where the galley is, where water dispensers are, things of that nature, just to get them reoriented with where they're going to be living and working for more than the next week. So all of that still to come for now, though. We're still in these hatch operations, waiting for additional confirmations. But right now it's Tom Marshburn continuing to work on the station side. We did get confirmation that APAS, so the station side hatch, is open. So he's removed a docking target, he's affixing a cover, and then getting some of the intermodule ventilation set up before we then get ready for hatch equalization. So we'll get a call from the crew on station, call from the crew on Dragon, and then a go from the ground, and giving a rough approximation of how long we expect that to take. But if we follow the timeline as it was written out, taking into account our roughly 45-minute late docking time, we should be within a half an hour of that Dragon hatch open. So we'll continue to follow along. We'll give you the updates as we hear them called out. Everything continuing on board the station to welcome AX-1 on board.
And SpaceX station is ready for Dragon hatch equalization.
So we just
Copy
heard
that, Tom, and we'll stand
another
by
step
for
completed.
Endeavor's call for their half.
So as mentioned, the station calling down first that they're ready for hatch equalization. Now we'll stand by for a call from the Crew Dragon Endeavor astronauts that they're ready for equalization. The ethos, the life support, and environmental system officer here in Houston reporting we should take only about 2 minutes for this hatch equalization to take place. So we might be hopefully jumping ahead on our timeline now.
SpaceX and station on the big loop. We are also ready for hatch equalization.
Copy that, Endeavor.
Dragon, SpaceX on
Standby
Dragon
for
to ground
equalization.
for waste system flush.
Expected to take 2 minutes once we get started.
Copy. Go ahead, Jake.
Hey Dragon, as you heard on the big loop, we are marching towards hatch open. Last step there is hatch equalization, about 2 minutes for that. We are tracking the waste system flush as the last big item to be completed in Dragon. Want to make sure it's on your agenda as well.
Yes, Jake, good read. It is on our agenda. I thought it would be appropriate to skip that to get to the hatch open unless you think otherwise.
Hey Mike, glad we're talking about it. The hatch is going to mechanically block the waste system, and for that reason, it's required to do this flush before hatch open.
That's a great call. There's always a good reason for it. We'll put that in work right now.
Thanks for working through that, Mike.
All right, so both the station and Dragon crews have reported their readiness for hatch equalization. Onboard Dragon, they do have to do a flush of the waste disposal system first.
And how's the audio? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Set up for a formal welcome ceremony with the crew. and continuing to get a view inside of Node 2, looking up at the space-facing hatch. And that's where Crew Dragon Endeavour has docked. Tom Marshburn there. We just heard him do an audio check on the mic we're going to see them use for that welcome ceremony. The station hatch is open, and we were just waiting for the crew on Dragon to do a final flush of that waste disposal system, after which we'll be able to step into hatch equalization. So that's just making sure pressures equalize, pressures essentially equal to each other on either side of the Dragon hatch, and then the MCCX team at Hawthorne will give the Dragon crew a go to begin opening up that hatch. We only expect that equalization to take about 2 minutes, so it should happen pretty quickly. And then once that hatch is open, we'll be able to welcome the AX-1 astronauts on board. And getting a pretty unique view here. This is that centerline camera that we were watching during the final phases at the EMA, where you can see NASA astronaut Caleb Barron there just up and outside of the hatchway looking in. So this was the camera feed that we were working to get routed over to the crew during that final approach, and still turned on at this point, but once the hatch is opened, we will lose this view. But we are just still standing by for the Dragon hatch to get opened. We'll get into hatch equalization momentarily. As soon as we get into that, we expect it to only take about 2 minutes for the pressures to equalize, and then the Dragon crew will get the go to open up the hatch. And this is Mission Control Houston, just still waiting for that hatch open to take place. Getting this really cool split screen view though, as we're looking on the left at a camera inside of the Station Node 2, the Harmony module, and it's looking up at the space facing of the Zenith port where Crew Dragon's currently docked. And then on the right there, the centerline media camera on the Dragon spacecraft looking inside of station. It's looking inside the pressurized mating adapter number 3, on top of which is international docking adapter number 3, where the Crew Dragon Endeavour docked successfully just about an hour and a half ago, with that docking at 7:29 Central. So again, we're just standing by for the hatch equalization to begin. We expect it to only take about 2 minutes, and that's just to ensure pressures are equal on either sides of the Dragon hatch. So essentially in the Dragon cabin atmosphere and in that vestibule and PMA area just on the other side. And the Dragon crew will get to go to open the hatch. There's a decal on the Dragon hatch, which can be opened from either side, but is going to get opened on the Dragon side following the nominal timeline. And then after we get the hatches open, there's a couple of immediate steps just to configure Dragon for its long-term dock duration to the space station, where it's going to be for more than a week docked to that upper part of Node 2. There's a couple of steps they have to take to just essentially prep Dragon for that docked ops. They're going to safe or remove some of the LiO cartridge, the lithium hydroxide cartridge that's used to scrub CO2 from the atmosphere while Dragon's in free flight. They just seal that up and store it temporarily, and then it gets reinstalled once Dragon's ready to go out and execute its free flight return.
SpaceX Endeavour, Dragon to ground.
Dragon, SpaceX, ready to copy on Dragon to ground.
We are really ready for Dragon hatch opening now with the urine flush complete. And would you like me to make that call in the big loop?
To 4.400, section 6. We've got one command to send, and then I'll send a call on the big loop.
Copy that.
All right, and
Dragon,
now we are
SpaceX
ready for
on
hatch
Dragon to
equalization.
ground. One quick note, wondering if we can come on board with cameras.
That's affirmative, Jake. Come on board.
Copy, Dragon. We'll be on board imminently.
And the camera is being turned on once again inside Dragon. We should be able to join them momentarily. But getting the go as we're now about to execute hatch equalization. We only expect that to take about 2 minutes. It'll be a command sent from the ground to the Dragon spacecraft from MCCX out in Hawthorne. Once that's complete, the crew will get to go to open up the hatch.
SpaceX and ground also reporting 4.102, sorry, 12 is complete, 4.012.
Copy all, Mike, on suit doffing completion.
And getting views inside of Endeavour once more, looking over the shoulders of commander and pilot. You heard them report suits have been docked, so they're out of their flight suits, or they're out of their spacesuits rather, and those have been stowed away, now in flight suits and awaiting the hatch open operations.
Dragon, SpaceX on Dragon to ground. We're standing by for final equalization. Stand by for a call on the big loop.
Okay, Jake, and just to give you a heads up, we are now looking at 2.102, step 6.3. We suspect that should say on MCCX go, but let us know if that's a mistake.
So again, we're just standing by for that final hatch equalization. It'll be a command from MCCX in Hawthorne. That'll get sent up to Dragon, and they'll equalize pressures on either side of the hatch. Then the crew will get to go on the Dragon side to open up the hatch and make their way inside the International Space Station.
Dragon, SpaceX on Dragon to ground for 2.102 clarification. We see step 6.3 and confirm it is an MCCH go. That's after the hatch is open, sort of a handover to the ISS crew. Yeah.
Okay, well, one of you guys tells us to do it, we'll do it.
Dragon, station, SpaceX on the big loop, go for hatch opening per decal, followed by the remaining actions in 4.400, section 6.
Endeavour copies in work.
All right, good news there. We're through hatch equalization. The crew's been given the go to open it up. And so there is a decal on the hatch itself. It shows them how to work the hatch mechanism. They're going to open it up, and it swings inside of the Dragon spacecraft to get stowed. After they get it open, they'll have a couple of steps just to configure Dragon for docked ops. They're going to install a hatch seal cover just to protect that seal around the open hatchway as people are moving in and out. I'm also installing a cover over the hatch itself. And now we're just standing by for hatch open.
The hatch is open.
Copy that, hatch open.
There we go, hatch opening. The hatch opened. The hatch opened at 9:13 a.m. Central Time. It's 14:13 GMT, 7:13 for the teams over in Hawthorne. So now they're going to install that hatch seal and a cover over the hatch itself, and then start making their way on board the station. But the hatch is open. Nothing but space in between Crew Dragon Endeavour and the space station. And we're just standing by for the crew to start making their way through. Again, the hatch open on Dragon. So hatch open on the station side some time ago. Hatch now open on Dragon. They've got a couple of steps just to prepare Dragon for docked. Its docked configuration. And then we should start to see them make their way through the pressurized mating adapter and into the International Space Station. So continuing to stand by, we can see the AX-1 astronaut still inside Dragon. And we should see them start making their way out momentarily. So Expedition 67 Commander Tom Marshburn making his way down, and there we are. So Eytan Stibbe, first one through, followed shortly after by Mark Pathy making his way onto the space station. Looks like just behind him is going to be Larry Connor, the pilot for the AX-1 mission. Now through the hatchway into Node 2. Mark adjusting our camera angle for us. And then making his way out of a spacecraft named Endeavour onto the space station for the second time. No stranger to the orbiting lab, Michael Lopez-Alegria. So with the entire AX-1 crew now on board, we're going to spend a couple minutes just getting everybody set up, and then we'll be able to kick off our welcome ceremony.
And Houston Station on 2, just checking scene checks and let us know when you want us to go active with the mic.
Copy that. We're taking a look. We'll let you know.
We can see the crew gathering here in Node 2 in the Harmony module. The Expedition 67 crew welcoming the AX-1 astronauts on board. There's still a couple of steps to get through, and then once we're done with our initial configs on board, we'll be able to get into this welcome ceremony. So a short handover now with the video link. It's likely the crew will have a couple of tasks to take before we get into that welcome ceremony, but good to see them all making their way on board. As mentioned, there's a couple of post-docking configurations steps that have to take place on board Dragon, namely sealing up a lithium hydroxide canister that's used to scrub CO2 from the atmosphere while Dragon's in free flight, also getting a hatch seal and a hatch cover on. So it's looking like the crew might get the call to go through those steps, and then following that, we'll be able to kick off our welcome ceremony.
Okay, copy. So Tom's going to do the grab sample, and I assume we seem to talk about like the LIO swap out for the post-hatch opening activity? Okay, copy. That's in work, and we'll let you know when we're done.
And so a couple of quick tasks for the crew just before we get into the welcome ceremony. Again, they got to go seal that LIO canister inside Dragon. They're going to take it out, seal it up, and it's going to stay stowed until they unseal it and reinstall it when Dragon's ready to depart the space station. Also getting that hatch seal on. Commander Tom Marshburn's also going to use a grab sample container just to get an instantaneous air sample in that hatchway between the two, and that's just another standard procedure.
Houston and Denver on the big loop. We're looking for a go from you in section 6, step 1, 6.2 of 2.102.
And Endeavor Houston, copy that.
Apologies, make that 6.3.
Yes, sir. For 6.3, we concur, but before we do that, we need confirmation from you that you have the IMV duct installation complete in step 6.1.
Stand by, we'll need to get back to you on that.
Copy.
And so again, the crew moved back up towards Dragon just to step through some of those post-docking procedures. One of them is getting an IMV, an intermodular ventilation duct, installed, and that's just to begin circulating the cabin air from station through the cabin of the Dragon spacecraft as we continue to further integrate it into the station stack. They're also removing that LiO cartridge, sealing it up, and then stowing it, and then getting a hatch cover on the Dragon hatch and a hatch seal cover around that seal, just to give it some extra protection as folks are moving in and out of it over time. And then they'll make their way back into Node 2 here, and then we'll be able to officially and formally welcome the AX-1 crew on board. So that'll just take a couple of minutes for all of that to get done. Again, just to put Dragon into its configuration for extended docked operations. Once we get through that, we'll get to our welcome ceremony, after which the AX-1 crew will join the rest of Expedition 67 in a safety briefing, just doing a refresher of what they trained on the ground, going over all of the different safety features of the International Space Station, including exit paths and also the location of emergency gear. And then the AX-1 astronauts have a couple hours of handover built in.
For 6.1.
Copy that, Endeavour. Give us 30 seconds. We're going to activate the fan. Once that's done, I'll come back with a go for you in 6.3.
Copy.
All right, and so they have that IMV, that intermodular ventilation, now installed, and so the teams here on the ground in Houston are going to enable it from Mission Control Houston, essentially turning the fan on, and that's just going to give a positive pressure to start circulating atmosphere through the Dragon capsule with the rest of station. And then per his procedures, Mike LA is going to take a look and just make sure there's no debris under a panel on that air circulation, and then he's going to move into removing the lithium hydroxide
Endeavour Houston back with you on
canister
here.
inside Dragon.
You are go to proceed in step 6.3. And I want to relay also from the SpaceX team here, if you guys can circle back when that's done to procedure 4.400, section 6. Sounds like you've got a couple small steps left to complete in that procedure as well.
All right, copy all, Scott. That's in work.
We see one of our AX-1 crew members, Eytan Stibbe, there in Node 2. We're going to see the rest of them start to gather as they're just going through the final stages of getting Dragon configured for docked operations. We've successfully hooked up and turned on the IMV fan, just integrating Dragon's cabin atmosphere with that of station. Right now, the spacecraft commander, Mike LA, working to remove the lithium hydroxide canister, which is used to scrub CO2 from the atmosphere while Dragon's in free flight. That'll get sealed up and stored away, and then it'll get unsealed and reinstalled when it's time for Dragon to undock and come home. They have several of these canisters on board to provide that critical life support function. And he's getting some assistance right now inside Dragon from some of the Crew 3 astronauts who went through essentially the exact same procedures when they docked the station in Crew Dragon Endurance. So very familiar with the procedures, giving him a hand to help things get done as quickly as possible. They're also going to be installing a cover on the Dragon hatch and also on the hatch seal, just giving both of those critical items some extra protection as folks are going to be moving in and out of Dragon over the coming days. One of the AX-1 crew members is going to be sleeping inside Dragon during the dock stay. But again, once we get all these steps wrapped up, the rest of the crew is going to gather here in Node 2, the Harmony module, and then we'll be able to kick off our formal welcome to the first private astronaut mission ever to the International Space Station. And we're just continuing to
Dragon,
it does appear that
SpaceX on
they've
the big loop.
successfully
Go ahead on the big loop, Jake.
Hey, Mike, we saw you do some audio reconfiguration there. Our ask is that you leave audio in the current configuration, what you just did, push to talk to ISS.
Copy that.
Sounds good. Second item is that we're hoping you can step through 4.400 6.9 to disable backup lighting on the control panel.
Yes, we will definitely do that. We're working through 2.102 right now, which has a higher priority for you.
Copy you working through 2.102 as well. Feel free to prioritize that. We have an eye on step 7.2 in 2.102 and letting you know that you do have a go to perform the manual override on the AVV panel.
Okay, not required. All of the valves are in the closed position, and I also, if you didn't hear it, reported earlier that the LIO cartridge is sealed and installed.
Okay, copy, Mike. Understand all valves indicate closed. No manual override needed.
That's a good copy.
All right, so continuing to tick off some of the steps to get Dragon ready for docked ops. We confirmed that the LIO, the lithium hydroxide canister, has been sealed and stowed. And then Spacecraft Commander Michael Lake confirming that all the Dragon vent valves are in the proper closed configuration. The only other items which we did see they were getting some assistance from NASA astronaut Kayla Barron is getting the hatch and the hatch seal covers fully installed. And again, those just give some additional protection to both the forward hatch and that hatch seal during the docked operations as individuals are moving in and out of Dragon. Meanwhile, we see half of our AX-1 crew standing by in Node 2, along with NASA astronaut and the current Expedition 67 Commander Tom Marshburn. And then once we're complete with these final steps on board Dragon, we'll see the rest of the crew move on board.
That Dragon arrival configuration is complete for 2.102.
Dragon SpaceX, we copy.
Houston copies as well. Thank you.
And so that completes all of their steps and their arrival through hatch opening procedures, meaning they've got the hatch and the hatch seal covers installed, all of their tools have been stowed, and they're ready to start making their way out of Dragon and on into station. So we should see the rest of the crew come out of Dragon momentarily and then start gathering everybody inside of Node 2. We have 11 space stations.
You got the grab sample at stowed to the staging bag.
SpaceX Endeavour on the big loop. Procedure 4.400 is complete.
Dragon, SpaceX, we see the same. Great working with you, Mike. I think this is the last you'll hear from me today. And next call, knock on wood, will be from Mike on the undock.
All right, Jake. Great working with you, Kaylee, and the team. A little bit of a delay, but that's been the story for AX-1 so far. It's all worth the wait. Thank you, guys.
Station Houston on 2. We are ready to do a quick scene check. If everyone wants to get in view, we'll do that, and then we can get into the PAO event very soon. Just a heads up for you, we do expect a quick handover to happen at 1450, so just be aware of that during the event.
All right, well, we now have Dragon in its dock configuration. No more calls
Copy,
from the core
handover
in
at
Hawthorne
1450,
at
and
this
we will
point.
start gathering the forces here into the
Handing
scene.
over now to the Capcom here in Houston as
Thank
the
you.
AX-1 crew join all of the astronauts on board the station. And now as we get everybody set up, we should be just moments away now from kicking off our formal welcome ceremony for the first private astronaut mission to the space station. And the crew working to try and get our camera reoriented so we can hopefully try and get a view of all 11 people now living on board the space station.
And guys, we like the scene. Looking good there. We should be able to get started here momentarily. Stand by. And Tom, back with you real quick. I think you were trying to talk on the mic, but I think it might have been off. Could you give another comm check real quick?
Okay, comm check. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. How do you copy?
And we're hearing you. And station, this is Houston. Are you ready for the event?
Everybody loud and clear.
Station is ready for the event.
Kathy Leaders, this is Mission Control, Houston. Please call station for a voice check.
Hey, I think we already did that. I think we already did that. Tom. I apologize. We can hear you loud and clear. Thank you. Tom, I don't know if you muted again.
The microphone is on, and we read you loud and clear, and we're ready to speak with you.
Okay, well, I had an old boss whose his greatest praise was when you heard him say, "Nicely done."
Old?
Oh, sorry. And so all I can say is nicely done. And to the whole team, the SpaceX Axiom station team, and Mike here, I know that the Expedition 67 crew is very happy to see your crew. I know Mike and I are very happy to see all of you there and seeing the new crew coming on board, looking so healthy and happy to be there. And I'm personally very happy to see how good the Expedition 67 crew looks also. Raja, I didn't know you grew a mustache, so it's always fun to see our crews there getting ready to go do a lot of work. I know the team has a lot of things lined up to do over this next week, and this is going to be important for us to be able to work as a team for our Expedition 67 folks to get the important work that they need to get done. But then, Mike, obviously your team to be able to get their work done too. So we're looking forward to see all the exciting things that are going to be going on, and then seeing everybody make it safely home.
And just a short momentary handover, we'll get that communication back real quickly with the space station and then continue through our welcome.
So, Mike, do you have a few words?
And Houston, I believe we're back with you.
Hey, Tom, this is Stuff. Can you guys hear us?
It's good to hear you, Stuff. We can read you loud and clear.
Great. Well, first, let me thank you and Expedition 67 crew for welcoming our crew on board. We're very excited to be there, of course. Mike, Larry, Eytan, Mark, you guys look great. The Dragon ride looks like that sat with you well. First, I'll say thanks to our SpaceX team for getting you there. That was really awesome. My thanks to NASA for hosting us, and to the entire crew. You know, we've been talking about this history-making mission for a long time, so we're going to stop talking about it now and just get on with it. So you guys have a great mission. We'll look forward to it. And with that, I'll hand it over to LA to do the pinning ceremony.
Hey, Mike and Kathy, thanks for greeting us on board. I got to tell you, it's quite an experience. I can't even begin to describe how fun it's been to be in Dragon for the last day and a half or so, watching these guys' faces light up. True story. You know, we had just reached orbit and getting out of our suits, and I was, busy at doing commander stuff, and one by one I could hear them say, "Expletive deleted," as soon as they looked out the window. Literally every single one of them. And I just smiled a little bit, and then when I got my turn to look at it, same expletive. It's just an amazing experience. Anyway, there's a tradition that when you cross a certain boundary, and that boundary is debatable, but in the United States it's 50 miles, you become an astronaut in altitude. And that happened to these three gentlemen for the first time yesterday. It was a pretty exciting moment. We were in the middle of first stage, but we noted it. And now I'd like to note it a little more officially. There is a very special pin that NASA astronauts wear that is gold and designed by the original Mercury 7, but until recently there has been no internationally recognized pin. So none of the other five, or I should say other four space agencies, nor do the Chinese that I know of, have a symbol that people wear in civilian clothes for commemorating that they're astronauts. So a little while ago, the Association of Space Explorers, which encompasses a lot of members from 38 different countries of flown astronauts, decided to commission such a pin, and I happen to have three of them in my hand. Tom, would you break them out for me? And when I pin these on, I think the numbers will be 582, 583, and 584, respectively, for Larry, Eytan, and Mark. I hope they will wear these with the pride that they deserve. And then I'm going to let Larry say something while I pin his, etc.
Yeah, well, first off, probably words don't describe it. I mean, I'm thrilled and honored to be up here. Thanks to SpaceX, phenomenal ride. I mean, no pun intended, but out of this world. Thanks to Axiom for making this dream come true. Thanks to NASA. Thanks to all the crew. Unbelievably welcome. And, yeah, we're here to experience this. But we understand there's a responsibility, and the responsibility is for this first civilian crew to get it right. And that's what we're fully committed to, with the support of everybody here at the ISS and on the ground. So it's going to be a busy week of research for us, and I'm sure it's going to fly by. And now I'd like to turn it over to my friend Eytan.
I'll take the opportunity. I need to press something.
I think it's live.
To say a few words in Hebrew on the International Space Station. ברוכים הבאים לתחנת החלל הבינלאומית, פעם ראשונה שאפשר לדבר פה בעברית. זכינו להיות חלק מצוות של 11 שנקרא Expedition 67. זה קבוצת עבודה שתעבוד ביחד, כולנו ביחד נעזור אחד לשני להשיג את המטרות, כל אחד בא עם תוכנית עבודה מלאה, ובהצלחה לכולם, בהצלחה לרקיע. Mark.
Thanks, Eytan. First off, I'd like to thank our hosts here at the ISS for the warm welcome. It was really great to be looking up through the closed hatch and see you guys making your way to us, and then to come on board and be so warmly greeted by all of you. That was great. Thanks a lot, and looking forward to spending the next few days. Sorry, I forgot to look up there. Next few days here with all of you, and wow, it's just amazing to be here. It's hard to find the words, but it's been an amazing journey, and I'm not just talking about the last 24 hours. I'm talking about everything that's got us here. It's been amazing, and thanks to Mike and all the folks at Axiom for hatching this plan and getting it going, and to SpaceX and NASA for making it happen as well. Thanks, everyone. And sorry, last but definitely not least, all my family and friends whose love and support made this possible.
And we just want to say the Expedition 67 crew, all of us are incredibly thrilled and excited to welcome Axiom on board. And on this historic day for continued, we expect long-term cooperation with NASA, with our international partners, and with private companies and private astronauts. So we're ready to go to work.
Thank you. Godspeed, everybody.
Thank you, guys. Have fun.
Okay, with that, AX-1 officially welcomed on board the International Space Station. So it was a very successful day. We got a little bit of extra time there as we hung out about 20 meters from the space station, but everything completing as expected. We were able to dock AX-1 to the space station at 7:29 a.m. Central. It's 12:29 GMT, while they were flying just about 258 statute miles over the Atlantic, getting the hatches open a little less than 2 hours later. And 4 crew members, the first ever all-private astronaut mission to the space station, now on board and welcome. So it's going to be an extremely busy week for them ahead, but it was great to take everybody through the operation so far this morning. That's going to do it for me from Mission Control Houston, so I'll sign off and send it back to Andy and Tricia at Hawthorne. Thank you both for being with me this morning, and congratulations again on the successful docking of AX-1 to the station.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. Congratulations to yourself, too. It's been a super exciting 24 hours, but that is going to wrap it up for us here in Hawthorne 2 for the live joint coverage of AX-1's arrival to the International Space Station. It has been an honor to support AX-1. We wish the Axiom crew a successful time on station, and we look forward to joining you when it's time to return home.
Yes, it was certainly very exciting to see the camaraderie already building, and we're looking forward to what they'll accomplish in the next 8 days. Starting Monday, April 11th, we will be providing daily updates from Axiom Mission Control to highlight the range of science research and STEAM events the crew will be conducting over their 8-day mission. Be sure to visit axiomspace.com and follow the Axiom social media channels for real-time updates.
On behalf of SpaceX, Axiom Space, and NASA, thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
I have a feather. In my right hand, a hammer. And I guess one of the reasons we got here today was because of a gentleman named Galileo a long time ago who made a rather significant discovery about falling objects in gravity fields. And we thought that where would be a better place to confirm his findings than on the moon. And so we thought we'd try it here for you. The feather happens to be appropriately a Falcon feather.